That debate was fantastic.
Good evening. My name is Jim MITULSKI, and I'm the Interim Senior Minister at the Congregational Church of Needham, and I want to welcome you tonight. And I have a few remarks to make just at the very beginning. For 160 years, we've been serving the Needham community here at the Congregational Church as a spiritual home. And I want to say in the congregational tradition, we've been immersed in the democratic process. That's part of our spiritual practice here. We've engaged in the politics of our day, and that includes back in the 1860s, abolition and suffrage. Our members have served proudly in the Union Army, and we were deeply committed to ending slavery. Our church is in the forefront of many social causes, and even when we don't agree among ourselves, we're proud to be a forum for the free exchange of ideas. That's what it means to be a Congregationalist. So for the past 30 years, we've had a partnership with a relationship based on the accompaniment model with a rural community in Guatemala. And our denomination stands firmly in favor of women's rights, pro-choice, environmental causes, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights, civil rights for all, and for immigrant rights. So we're proud to host this meeting tonight with Jose Antonio Vargas from Define American. We're looking forward to hearing Reverend Ryan Eller, who's also from Define American, preach tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. if you're church-minded. And we welcome all the various community groups who've come together tonight so that we can have what we believe is the largest conversation to date about immigration and identity that we've seen. So we know it won't be the last, but we're glad to have this here tonight, and we're glad to have all of you here. We have a slogan in the congregational churches that says, and I'm going to use it here, whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, you're welcome here. And we mean that not only in church, but we mean it for conversations like this. And I just want to ask you, can you feel the energy in this room tonight? Do you feel this? Isn't this exciting? Yeah. When we pulled this together, we talked about various slogans and hashtags. We tried no hate in Needham. And we really believe this is what Needham stands for, no hate in Needham. We tried thinking about whether this is the kind of crowd that does chants and protest chants. I don't know if it is or not, but just try this one. No hate, no fear, everyone is welcome here. Let's try it out. No hate, no fear, everyone is welcome here. No hate, no fear, everyone is welcome here. Okay, I'm going to change one word. No hate, no fear, immigrants are welcome here. No hate, no fear, immigrants are welcome here. No hate, no fear, immigrants are welcome here. Oh my God, I feel young again. That's great. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, my dear friend, Reverend DARYN STYLIANOPOULOS, who's the pastor at the First Baptist Church, who's also going to teach us just one little protest song. It's not a hymn, don't worry. You're not in church. It's church building, but there is something about singing also that captures the energy. So she's going to teach us a little song.
So, I am Reverend DARYN STYLIANOPOULOS from the First Baptist Church in Needham. Jim graciously invited me here to lead you in song, and I'm happy to do so, because though this is not a hymn, songs and music are foundational to my faith, and they're foundational to Baptist heritage, and they're foundational to the movement of people in time and space, and especially when it comes to building up and celebrating courage and persistence, which is what we're here to do tonight. We're here both to receive a good word from Jose Antonio Vargas, and also to celebrate the courage and persistence and strength of some of our Needham neighbors and Massachusetts neighbors in this place. And for them, I'm truly grateful. And so, as we prepare our hearts and minds and bodies in this spirit of celebration, I invite you to stand as you're able. Get loose. Shake up your bodies. We're going to shake up this world for justice. And we're going to sing, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on if you don't know it, you'll catch on pretty quickly after. So, will you join me? I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm gonna keep going with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm gonna keep going with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm gonna keep going with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah,
That is an impossible performance to follow. Thank you, DARYN, so much. You're just a bright light in this town. So hello, good people. You just look fantastic out there. Been a huge effort on the part of a lot of people to make this happen and pull it together, and I'm just so proud of all of you for being here. My name is John Kirk. I am a member of Progressive Needham. That's a chapter, one of 19 chapters of Progressive Massachusetts. And Progressive Massachusetts is a grassroots organization committed to helping Massachusetts fulfill its progressive promise. Progressive Massachusetts is honored to be sponsoring this event, and we look forward to hearing from a hero in our midst, Jose Antonio Vargas. Before we get to the main event, and I will keep this brief, we want to take time to acknowledge and encourage the good work of some individuals from right here in Massachusetts. Progressive Needham is delighted to present the first Persistence Awards. As we all know, the word persistence has become synonymous with our intrepid and hard-fighting U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren. The Senator, I am told, sends her regards and regrets for not being here to present the awards herself, but wishes all here well and sends her personal congratulations to the recipients. Each of the honorees is at a different stage of what will be a lifelong fight for social justice, and each in their own way has taken a courageous stand to represent and advocate for those who are voiceless in our country and in our political system. Before we get to the awards, and on behalf of Progressive Needham, here are just a few brief words about why we are here today. Progressive Needham, Progressive Massachusetts, and its various allies, including the Congregational Church of Needham and the ACLU of Massachusetts, have come together to sponsor this event to foster our collective consciousness. We come together here in this place to hear the story of one man, Jose Antonio Vargas. His story, though, could be the story of any of us, or our grandparents, or our great-grandparents. The hope and belief is that when we become more aware of our interconnectedness, we will further develop our commitment to social justice and bring that commitment to our politics. Together we can make the laws in Massachusetts reflect its progressive reputation. And to get there, we will need one thing above all else, and that is persistence. And so, on behalf of Progressive Needham, I congratulate those who are receiving persistence awards, and to each of you, both the honorees and everybody present. We are counting on you for one thing, just one thing, to persist. That's what we do at Progressive Needham and Progressive Massachusetts and the Congregational Church of Needham and the ACLU. That's what Jose Antonio Vargas does and what we all need to do, persist. And know that you are not alone in this effort. It can feel disorienting and somewhat lonely out there in these days, given the state of the world. All these organizations, including Progressive Mass, is here to help and support you on your journey towards social justice, to support social justice. So if you're not a member of Progressive Massachusetts, I would highly encourage you to join. That's my little pitch for the organization. Again, thank you all for being here, and thanks to all of the various parties who've been involved in organizing this event. Just want to make a little comment on logistics for this award ceremony. It's our first, so please be kind. On behalf of Progressive Needham, the Persistence Award will be given by State Senator for Middlesex and Worcester Counties, Jamie Eldridge. Jamie is an original sponsor of the Safe Communities Act and a champion for social justice in Massachusetts, and was just deeply involved in the Safe Communities testimony on the Hill, or hearing that occurred on the Hill, and we'll be hearing more about that later. Jim MITULSKI, interim minister of this church and a member of Progressive Needham, will be announcing and introducing the honorees, and we ask the honorees to, as your names and descriptions of your accomplishments are read, that you join us here. You'll receive the award, stay together, and we'll get a picture of the group with Jamie when it's concluded. And with that, I hand it over to Jim for some very brief remarks. Jim.
I don't know why they always tell preachers to keep it brief. I just don't know why. So we have a mix of local and regional honorees, and our first one, as you see in your program, is Heather YOUNTZ. And Heather was one of the first local immigration attorneys to respond to the administration's travel ban in January. She was right there at the airport where she assisted people who were unexpectedly stranded at Logan by this unfair, unjust ban. We present this award to Heather YOUNTZ, and we say, no ban, no wall, no raids. No ban, no wall, no raids. Can we welcome Heather YOUNTZ?
Thank you. The number one thing that people say to me when I tell them I'm an immigration lawyer is, wow, you must be busy. And I am. It's really hard being an immigration lawyer right now, but it's harder being an immigrant. Like many people here, I woke up on the morning of November 9th, 2016, with a cold fear gripping my heart. Election night felt like a bad nightmare, but when I awoke, I realized that it was my new reality. The calls started coming, the emails, the drop-in appointments, old clients, new clients, people I'd never met before came into our office, kids on their hips, fear in their eyes, not enough Kleenex in the world. The only light of hope that week of the election was that my mother, Ann Marinello, happened to be babysitting for me and staying at my house that week. She's here tonight with my dad, Neil Marinello, and without the support of these two and my amazing husband, Marcus, I don't know how I would be functioning right now. I came home every night that first week in tears, crying about how I feared that Trump was going to target my immigrant clients, my undocumented clients, my Muslim clients, my survivors of domestic violence, my unaccompanied child clients, all of whom have shown outstanding bravery in the face of unthinkable injustice. In the months that progressed, my fears came true. My clients were rattled to their bones by Trump's executive orders, by his relabeling of everyone as deportable, by his description of all immigrants as criminals. I realized that they never woke up on November 9th. They were living in the nightmare of anti-immigrant America, and they were facing every horror as it unfolded in front of them. And something steeled in me. And I thought, heck no. Well, it wasn't heck, but we're in a church and my kids are here. I have the wonderful privilege of working with Susan Church and DARYN Demese, both of whom know that now is the time to act in defiance of Trump's policies. We knew that we have to fight back. Trump may expect blind loyalty from the government officials who work for him, but he's not going to get it from us. We are here in this incredible state with many forward-thinking leaders like Maura Healey and Juana Matias and Denise Garlick. And we are going to protect people from this anti-immigrant president and these unconstitutional policies focused on making America hate again. When I went to the airport with Susan Church the day after the Muslim ban, I didn't know he would end up in court that night. But as I saw protesters gather by the thousand in the international terminal, and I heard them chanting, "You are welcome here," and I realized that no matter what happened, the good, fierce, progressive people of Massachusetts would be there for us every step of the way. And I can't tell you how much that motivated me. After we won the restraining order against Trump's Muslim ban, someone asked me if it's over now. No, it's not over. I've been back to the airport, I've been back to court, and I will go again. You can forward my mail there. I am one of many, and we are not done. We will keep fighting, and we will keep winning because we have justice and honor and the Constitution on our side. And we have you. People like you who are standing up and speaking out about how this is not right. So thank you. I can't tell you how much this means to me. It's a time of incredible significance, and this award is something I will never forget.
Clark Taylor is the founder of the Needham Area Immigration Task Force, as well as the Guatemala Partnership, a program of the Needham Congregational Church originally, and really a model community organizer. Everything that Clark Taylor does bears the imprint of empowering the people who work with him and alongside him. And we claim him as a member emeritus of the Congregational Church, but he is also an active, and he's really a member of the Unitarian Church. And we are proud to claim him as really a member of both. We are just so delighted to honor Clark, and also where there's Clark, there is Kay. So we honor Clark and Kay tonight with this award. There would not be a progressive Massachusetts, there would not be a progressive Needham without Harmony Wu. And I can say this from having worked alongside her. She is a board member of the ACLU of Massachusetts. She is a tireless warrior for social justice. We snuck in together to the Elks Club of West Roxbury and infiltrated a sanctuary, Bostonians Against Sanctuary Cities of a meeting recently. And I have to say, she was brilliant. And she didn't pass very well as a member of the Elks Club because she's just so glamorous, right? Yeah, it's true. I just want to honor her because when you work with her, you want to work hard, and you want to keep working hard, and she evokes the best in you as a fellow comrade in the struggle. So just let's do it again. Let's congratulate her for her work. Denise Garlick, our representative here in Needham, our homegrown representative. Who works harder than Denise Garlick? Nobody. And we could pick a number of things to honor her for, but we're picking just one today because tomorrow is Race Amity Day throughout the state, but we're going to be honoring her for her accomplishment in introducing Race Amity Day into the legislature, and will be a special ceremony here at the Congregational Church here in Needham. We could pick a number of things to honor her for, but this one thing today we want to lift up Denise Garlick, our state representative, for successfully introducing the Race Amity Bill into the legislature because she believes in reconciliation and she believes in progress on this very important issue. Thank you, Denise. Earlier this year, you may have heard about, depending upon your what news sources you're reading, either about a terrible thing that happened in Brockton or about a valorous thing that happened when State Representative Michelle Dubois alerted her constituents that there was potential ICE activity, and she warned her undocumented constituents to stay inside and not answer the door because of ICE activity in her area. So here's what Sheriff Hodgson said. Yeah. Sheriff Hodgson said this. Sheriff Hodgson. This is the most outrageous example of what's going on across the United States that's undermining my job and every other law enforcement officer in the United States. If you listened to the Latino press, they said things like this: good for her. At least somebody is doing something. At least somebody says something. A lot of people want to speak up, but they're afraid, said Felicita Sepulveda from the Family Center in Brockton. We want to appreciate you for doing something. Michelle Dubois was the subject of disgusting, sexist, violent discourse and threats as a result of taking her stand and doing the right thing and being a person of leadership and of conscience. And we want you to hear tonight something that can't make up for that, but is a balance to it, and in the words of encouragement and love for being leadership. Can we appreciate her for doing the right thing?
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to try to be brief, but Jim said I could say a few words since I'm from far away. So I represent Brockton, and thank you all for welcoming me here tonight. It's great to be recognized with a Persistence Award by Progressive Needham and be with all you progressives here today in Representative Garlick's beautiful district. You have a wonderful representative in Representative Garlick. She's such a leader in the House. Yeah, does a really great job, so you really do. So persistence and empathy are my two favorite aptitudes. When I talk to young people in my district, high school students at Brockton High, and kids even younger in middle school, I say that persistence is the one of the aptitudes I tell them that is going to be most important to them growing up. Don't give up, don't give in. If you fall down, get back up, go at your own pace, but keep going, and fight for what you know is right. So this Persistence Award means a lot to me. And empathy is really the attribute that gets me here to be with all of you this evening. Empathy for my neighbor, our immigrant neighbors, who are now in the eye of the alt-right hate storm. Empathy for both immigrants that are documented and not documented, and even for those among us and our neighbors who fall victim to the skewed logic of the alt-right hate machine. We must have persistence in highlighting all these awful things that are happening by Donald Trump's deportation force, so we can convince our neighbors who have been brainwashed and lied to that all this is right in the American way, so they can see for themselves that it is not right. We must be persistent in our message that immigration is our country's strength. Back in March, when I forwarded a friend's Facebook post onto my social media site concerning a well-known rumor about an ICE raid with the legal services attorney's telephone number, as I really think is my responsibility as a state representative, the alt-right hate machine descended on my social media platforms, calling my home and my office for 4 days straight with hateful words that is too ugly to say, because when I do, I start crying about it. It was tough, and many of you had my back, and people just like you, and I appreciate that. I think what I did is really summed up to me by Congressman John Lewis. I got to see him address a graduating crowd, and he says it a lot on his Twitter feed, that when we see something that's wrong, we have to put ourselves in the way. And that's really the simple act that I did with my Facebook post. I put myself in the way of that, and we don't know if that saved someone's family from being ripped apart or not, but I saw something that was wrong, and I put myself in the way of it. And another thing that he always talks about is the need to get into good trouble sometimes. So I'm a pot stirrer, and I like good trouble. And so it's tough. It's something you really have to deal with the consequences of, but we have to be brave during these most difficult times. And we all know that we're on John Lewis's side for this fight against the hate-mongering and race-baiting, and I'm in it, and I want to continue in this fight for equity. However, the masters of fake news and the alt-right spin machine are continually descending on me and people like me and regular citizens that aren't elected to silence us. And we really need to fight back. And they come with a lot of money and a lot of loud bullhorns into the world of our neighbors. So if you can be a bullhorn for the right, for the good and the just and equality, you're helping me when I speak out, because people know that I'm not alone, and we aren't alone. We're all together here in this fight for civil rights. And you know, if you have extra dollars and you wanted to donate it to my campaign, I represent a very poor district, and it is very difficult for those folks to be able to fundraise for me in the level that the fake news spin machine does. And they have a lot of money, and we all know that sometimes the good gal and the good guy loses to the awful smear campaigns. We've seen it before. So I challenge all of you to be like John Lewis. And in closing, I would just like to reference a discussion between John Washington and a bunch of newly arrived Irish folks from the 1783. Way back then, he said America is open to receive not only the opulent and the respectable stranger, but the oppressed and the persecuted of all nations and religions. He assured them that they would be, quote, welcome to a participation of all of our rights and privileges, if by decency and propriety of conduct they appear to merit the enjoyment. And we know a lot of people that are here that have been here decades, whose children are U.S. citizens, whose spouse is a U.S. citizen, who has broken no law, and they are being treated terribly right now. So I appreciate all of us being on the right side of this fight, and thank you very much for this recognition.
Our final honoree is RENÉE Graham from the Boston Globe. She's the associate editor and a columnist there. Graham's writing is always superb, and she fearlessly and thoughtfully addresses race, saying what others refuse sometimes to say or see. She draws connections that not everyone is willing to make, and she's an intersectional prophetic voice. Her editorial pieces not only stick with you that day, but they shape your consciousness about race, class, and gender over time, influencing not only your thought, but your actions. So tonight we have not only one Pulitzer journalist on the stage, but we hope that one day there will be two. And we are proud to recognize the work of RENÉE Graham, and we say thank you for the ways that you speak up and speak out.
I'm really pleased to be here tonight and honored, so thank you. I was fortunate to be raised in a household of pathologically opinionated people, especially my mother, grandmother, and aunts. Listening to them debate everything from politics to soap operas, I absorbed the importance of being engaged, speaking your mind, and the belief that nothing worthwhile is ever achieved by being quiet. Every day, we are reminded, especially in these perilous times, that silence simply isn't an option. When I write, I hear the voices of my mother and grandmother, who are no longer with us, and my aunt, who remains as sharp as ever at 82. They always remind me to speak the truth, and so tonight, I dedicate this to them. These are women who were forced to deal with misogyny and racism that because of them, I never will have to. And they were determined, unstoppable, and persistent. And as I mentioned, so tonight, I dedicate this award to them. Thank you very much.
So we couldn't have planned better this evening's events with having Jose Antonio Vargas here, with the events that took place in the State House yesterday, the rising discourse, the hearing on the Safe Communities Act. And we could not have planned better than having Senator Jamie here with us tonight. And you are our living hero on this. You are implementing and doing something about what this whole evening is about. So we want to hear firsthand from you, but we don't want to just hear from you what happened yesterday. We want to say thank you for what you are doing. Can we appreciate our senator?
Well, thank you so much, Jim, and good evening, everyone. And this is already a tremendous event. I look forward to the comments from Ryan Eller and Jose Antonio Vargas. I first just want to congratulate all of the awardees, and of course, I know my colleagues very well, and you heard in great detail my colleague Michelle DuBois' battles against hatred and bigotry, and specifically Sheriff Hodgson in Bristol County, and I really appreciate her courage. I also want to give a special thanks to Needham's own Denise Garlick, and we had the hearing on the Safe Communities Act, which Jim had mentioned, and not every legislator shows up and stands in solidarity for legislation that will support people who are in the shadows of life, and Denise was right there, right behind me, as we testified in support of the Safe Communities Act. So I'd like to give her another hand. Of course, anyone who knows Harmony Wu knows that she is always working behind the scenes to make sure an event goes correctly. And she wanted to note that the postcard you have to become a member of Progressive Massachusetts, which I hope you do become a member if you're not tonight, the address on the postcard has slightly wrong address. So if you're interested to become a member, if you have a pen or if you can remember this, the address for Progressive Massachusetts is not 49 West Street, but it's 41 West Street. And as someone that has really seen the progress and growth of Progressive Massachusetts really since Harmony first proposed and envisioned the idea 5 years ago, I really do encourage you to become a member of Progressive Massachusetts and be part of organizing for a wide array of economic and social justice issues. Of course, the one I'm speaking very briefly about tonight is an act to protect the civil rights and public safety of all Massachusetts residents. And I say the name because that's the full name of the Safe Communities Act. And I say that because it's important to remember what we're here to talk about and what we're here to focus on as far as policy on Beacon Hill, and that is to protect every single resident's civil rights, whether you're a U.S. citizen, a legal permanent resident, or undocumented immigrant, that no person, no human being is illegal. And this bill, for anyone who doesn't know about the bill, there is a flyer that was on your pew seat, and it's Senate 1305, House 3269. Very honored to file the bill with Representative Juana Matias. And I know that many people here were at the hearing yesterday. The hearing went from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., which was one of the longest hearings, I think, in recent history. And I would say easily 90% of the people there were in support of the Safe Communities Act. So anyone that knows Beacon Hill knows that there is always more and more advocacy and organizing to do to pass virtually any piece of legislation. And so I would ask you to keep up the advocacy and to sort of highlight the challenges we have is that, and I was speaking briefly with Jose about this before the formal program began, is that unfortunately often the progressive organizing infrastructure is not as strong as the other side. Obviously that's a big part of what Progressive Massachusetts was created for, but also we see the biases of the media, we see the biases of even just a few loud right-wing voices. And anyone that picked up the Boston Globe this morning saw that the picture of the individual testifying on the Safe Communities Act was not the hundreds of organizers, immigrants, and allies in support of the bill. The picture was not of the dozens of legislators testifying in support of the Safe Communities Act, but the picture was of Sheriff Hodgson opposing the Safe Communities Act. And I note that because that's what we're up against. We're up against a media that paints a very simplistic picture of issues, and we're up against very loud right-wing voices, which Michelle talked about, that are very, very easy way to drown out and stop progressive pieces of legislation like the Safe Communities Act. So I say that to say that we need your voices, we need your advocacy, whether on Beacon Hill or meeting with legislators one-on-one. Thank you so much for everyone for coming here. I was really honored to be asked to play a small role in presenting this, and I look forward to hearing from the main speakers. Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask Reverend Ryan Eller from Define American. You can hear him preach tomorrow morning at the Congregational Church at 10 a.m. I'm going to ask him to introduce Jose Antonio Vargas. And I'm going to also welcome our honorees, if you'd like to join your guests down in the pews on the main floor so you can see our speaker. You can do that at this time.
You must have started as a radical group because you decided to put two Baptists on the program, which is a really dangerous thing. If you haven't been able to tell already, I'm from the South, and so this is a little awkward for me. I'm not accustomed to thanking our state representatives and elected officials. But it's good to be here, and we are so very thankful for your invitation. My name is Ryan Eller. I'm the Executive Director of Define American. Very privileged to work every single day alongside Jose Antonio Vargas. And I'm going to be short because I'm just going to introduce him. Jose's going to share a little bit about his story, and so I'm just going to tell you what I think he's not going to share. I don't think he's going to mention that he's an Emmy-nominated filmmaker and that he's been on the cutting edge of making really amazing film these last 3 or 4 years. He's probably not going to mention all of the work that he did to earn his Pulitzer Prize and unearthing the AIDS epidemic, including unearthing the AIDS epidemic that's happening in Washington, D.C. What he's also not going to mention, though, is his tireless effort to demand honesty and that we in America start to see each other. He's not going to mention the fact that when he calls you friend, you have a friend for life. He's not going to mention the fact that every day that he's been in America, he's had folks not believe that he was an American, yet he still wakes up every day and fights for that American dream that many of us have lost. He's not going to mention probably the courage that it took to found an organization like Define American, not just to hide, not just to leave when so many folks wish for him to leave, but to get up every single day and do the work that we do at Define American and to be our energy every single morning. So I thought the best introduction for Jose would simply be to tell you about our work through this video.
I may not have been born in America, but America was born in me.
I'm Jose. Nice to meet you.
Are you in line?
Sir, no, but sir, there's no line.
From Nigeria.
From Brazil. I'm an undocumented immigrant from Germany.
We mow your lawn. We work at your houses. Maybe we're your doctors. Maybe we're nurses. We're not who you think we are.
She climbed the ranks of Wall Street's most elite bank, Goldman Sachs, but she did it all, get this, as an undocumented immigrant.
A nationwide campaign is encouraging undocumented immigrants to publicly share their stories. The movement is organized by Define American.
Gareth, what do you want people to know about your status?
To help change the face of the stereotypical undocumented immigrant, and if I can come out and help share my story, hopefully that will help others come out and share their story also.
Casas says telling his story publicly has relieved a tremendous burden off of his shoulders and emboldened him to speak out on behalf of 11 million other undocumented immigrants.
Soy una luchadora y no me rindo. Así me den papeles o no me den, yo voy a seguir trabajando.
Why are we talking about white people on MTV?
Is Bensonhurst a white neighborhood?
Do I consider Bensonhurst a white neighborhood?
By the way, there's nothing wrong with that.
Not anymore.
There's more Asians, and it looks like there's more of them than there is us.
I think if we had a discussion, like an open forum discussion, open to the entire community, about immigration, about American identity, I think that would go a long way.
I come to this work because I'm the daughter of Nigerian immigrants who are actually undocumented for most of my childhood.
What is this experience like for you all, being in a U.S. history classroom, being taught by a white teacher?
They always talk about the good things white people did in their history. What about the bad things when they try to get rid of us? It should be all of U.S. history.
The English language matters.
Yeah,
it matters that we use terms that are illegal. They're here illegally.
But what you cannot do is to label a person illegal. And the reason why I say this is not because I learned it from some radical Latino or Latina studies professor when I was a college student. I learned it from Elie Wiesel.
Words matter, and words can hurt. Define American is an organization that is working to fight these stereotypes.
I would like to see a television show, and I would like to see a movie where being Latin or being from anywhere else is not a handicap, you see. That people don't succeed in spite of being Latin. They just happen to succeed because they're a person.
Mateo, you're an American citizen, right?
Oh, just because I'm Asian, I can't be a citizen?
No, I'm sorry. It's just that I've read about so many situations where parents bring their kids into the country illegally, and then, they don't even tell them that they're undocumented.
Believe me, I have plenty of documents. I went to the green card store personally with my grandmother.
The green card store?
Ladies and gentlemen, the bravest, most patriotic person that I know, Jose Antonio Vargas.
I couldn't even look Ryan in the eye. He was making me all emotional. So a few things I want to say before I start. The first thing is to congratulate all the honorees. Thank you for being with us and for gracing us with the dignity in which you do your work. So thank you. It has been an incredible 6 years doing the work that I do, and the past 4 years could not have happened without Ryan, the Reverend Ryan Eller. And, sometimes when you work with someone so close, you don't get to acknowledge them as much because you're so busy grinding and working. And I just want to publicly acknowledge the grace and the humility in which he does his work. And I'm glad to be able to do that in front of all of you. So. As I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that I wish there were more undocumented people sitting in this church watching all of you. It would really help mentally and emotionally and physically see all these people rise up in congregation, in support. I get asked a lot of questions. One of my favorite is actually from Bill O'Reilly, who once said to me off air, "What does it feel like to be the world's most famous illegal alien?" I don't know what that means. What I do know is that after traveling the country nonstop in the past 6 years, Define America has done more than 800 events in 48 states, engaging as many people as we possibly can. What I do know is that all that travel has told me, as a reporter, that immigration is the most controversial yet least understood issue in American life. Least understood not only by conservatives, but also by progressives. I know this based on the questions I get asked every day. Like, why haven't they deported you? I don't know. I don't know. President Obama, as you may know, deported more than 2.5 million immigrants, more than any other president in this country. President Trump has only taken advantage of what President Obama has created and what President Bush created before President Obama and what President Clinton. This has been a bipartisan mess. I get asked questions like, why don't you just get legal and fix this thing? I'm a masochist. This is so much more fun. But in all seriousness, as it currently stands, there is no path for someone like me to quote unquote get legal. Immigration is not one size fit all. We don't just get in the back of a line outside of City Hall, fill out a form, and poof, we have welfare. It doesn't work like that. No line exists for me to get in the back of. If there was such a line, I would be behind it. But it doesn't exist. I get asked questions like, why don't you just leave and go home? Well, I am home. People ask me these questions online and offline, and I gotta tell you, there are some people I will never engage, like Ann Coulter. I've been offered numerous times to debate Ann Coulter on television, but I just don't do that. I think she's a really wonderful, effective actress, and someone should give her an Oscar for what she does, but that's not what I do. So I try not to mess with Ann Coulter, but it was a particularly hard day that I actually responded. Ann Coulter tweeted this about a month after Trump announced he was running for president. I couldn't help but say something, so I did. We are not going anywhere. We're here, and just so they know, I copied President Trump and ICE and DHS. And then there's this man, Dennis O'Toole, who responded, "You're still a dirtbag illegal, go home scumbag." O'Toole, are you Irish? I asked. To which he said, "No, I'm American." To which I said, "Wait a second, but from where? Unless you're a Native American or an African American brought here, imported to this country to build this country as slaves, unless you're those two groups of people, you have to answer 3 fundamental questions. Where did you come from? How'd you get here? Who paid?" And then he goes, "Makes no difference. I was born here by American parents, period, ... To which I said, "Makes a big difference. Do you know the history of Irish immigrants and the racism and prejudice that they face in this country?" And he goes, "No, the Irish came legal." You know what I'm talking about. But wait a second. Well, Border Patrol was born in 1924, Ellis Island, 1892. Many Irish people migrated here after the potato famine, right? All the struggles and all. I mean, I remember reading books from Ted Kennedy about those coffin ships that the Irish used to take to come here, and so many people died on the journey that they called them coffin ships, right? And then he goes, "Well, Dennis," I like suggesting books to read, so I suggested that Dennis read how the Irish became white, which is a really fantastic book. So this is not something that I do every day, but I thought this was a really interesting exchange. He actually ended up following me on Twitter after this, and we've been communicating. He voted for Trump, and he said that he doesn't want me deported, and so which I thanked him for that. I told him that if he wanted to host a community forum, he's religious, he's Episcopalian, he says, if he wants to host something in his church, I would be more than happy to come. Unfortunately, he hasn't taken the offer yet. But for me, by the way, these are the kinds of questions that I face every day, the kind of engagement that I have to make a decision. Do I engage? Do I not engage? Around this time 6 years ago, at the height of my professional career, I was writing for the New Yorker magazine, and I had just my first documentary premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival. Around this time 6 years ago, against the advice of about 28 immigration lawyers, all but one of whom said, "Don't do this," I took the biggest risks of my personal and professional life and disclosed my undocumented immigrant status in the New York Times. Isn't that the most horrible photo you've ever seen? In the essay, which no lawyer read, all of my lawyers were like, "You gotta have us read this." No, you're not an editor. Only editors got to read it. In the essay, I know, sorry, immigration lawyers, I'm just, it was one of those things. In the essay, I talked about how I was smuggled by my grandfather, Teofilo, who moved to the United States in 1983, became a naturalized U.S. citizen years later, and changed his name to Ted, after Ted Danson in Cheers. My grandpa illegally smuggled me to the U.S. because he couldn't find a legal way to get me here. It wasn't considered a close enough of a relationship. So his plan, get his first grandson here in whatever way, I work under the table jobs, I marry a woman, and poof, I'm an American. All of that, of course, got complicated when I told my grandfather that I was gay. To me, marrying a woman for papers was just as confusing as the idea of my life being defined by papers I didn't have and laws I didn't understand. I didn't want to marry a woman and lie about who I was, so instead, I lied about being a U.S. citizen. Every job I got, from my first job of making sandwiches at Subway, to the summer internship at the Philadelphia Daily News, to the full-time job at the Washington Post, I claimed to be a U.S. citizen when I am not. You know when you get that employment form and you check the box? I kept checking U.S. citizen, which I found out years later was a serious legal offense that I should never have admitted to in the pages of the New York Times. I remember one of the lawyers telling me, Jose, the very fact that you lied about being a U.S. citizen is the very reason why you may never become a U.S. citizen. But you know, when I was a kid, as a teenager, I had to decide for myself that if I can't be a U.S. citizen because I was not born in the U.S., which is a privilege, if I cannot be a U.S. citizen because I don't have the right papers to be here, then what kind of citizen am I? And what does citizenship even mean? At an early age, I came to the conclusion that there is a different kind of citizenship, which is citizenship by participation. You engage. You contribute. You show up. You realize that the world does not revolve around you. You participate. Citizenship by participation. The writer Anne Lamott, who I love, once said, "Tell me what breaks your heart, and I will tell you your purpose." America, which I love very much, keeps breaking my heart. And because of that, on the day I came out in the New York Times, we started an organization called Define American, which uses stories to transcend politics and humanize this most political and partisan of issues. For us, stories are a weapon. They serve as a correction, intervention, liberation, using all forms of media to changing culture around immigration and take immigration out of the Mexican border wall box that we've locked it in and connecting it to the fact, the irreversible fact of a changing America. The truth is, the 11 million undocumented population live within the 43 million immigrant population. In other words, undocumented people like me live within their US-born sisters, brothers, and their naturalized US citizen aunts and uncles. I'm Filipino, we're like the Italians of Asia. We have huge families. Out of 34 Filipino Americans in this country, I'm the only one out of 34 who's here illegally. So when I get the hate mail and the hate calls and all of that, it's not just me, it's the rest of my family. And in the next 50 years, according to the Pew Research Center, right, 88% of the total US population growth is gonna come from immigrants. 88%. A country that has long been defined by the overly simplistic white and black binary, too often ignoring Native Americans and indigenous people, will be more Latino, will be more Asian, will be more mixed race. And in this changing America, we cannot divorce immigrant rights from women's rights, LGBTQ rights, the movement for Black lives, income inequality among all racial groups. Our issues intersect because our lives intersect. Our equalities, whether or not we like it, are tied to each other. This is a marriage, you and I. And for us at Define American, culture is politics. As you saw in that video, we cannot change the politics of an issue unless we change the culture in which people talk about the issue. That was the case with LGBTQ rights, and that will prove to be the case with immigrant rights. Because the truth is, while this issue is a moral crisis for 11 million undocumented immigrants and the millions more who make up our families and friends, immigrant rights is largely viewed as a political, partisan issue by the media, both the news media and the entertainment media, and the public that consumes all kinds of media. The reality is, since 9/11, when illegals, along with Muslims, became the quintessential other in American life, they're a danger to society. They're not Americans. They don't want to be Americans. They're taking away from America. The lies and the myths about illegals perpetuated by an organized, disciplined, well-funded anti-immigrant machine with ties to white nationalists was instrumental in electing Donald Trump president. It's not a surprise that Trump made immigration the central issue of his campaign. Most people don't know what it is. They just know that the country is changing. They know that they feel pain. They feel left out. And look, he points, blame them. Even if you haven't heard of Numbers USA, Center for Immigration Studies, and the Federation for American Immigration Reform, I refer to them as the Holy Trinity of all things anti-immigrant. Their impact is deep, unmistakable, and ubiquitous. Quoted in the New York Times and NPR, cited by conservative blogs and conservative talk radio, featured on Fox News, Drudge, and Breitbart. In America today, Breitbart runs immigration policy. And like the David to the anti-immigrant Goliath, Define American is leading the way in changing the culture in which we understand and see immigrants. We're doing this through our campaigns and our programs, like our Words Matter campaign. I prayed to the altar of Dr. Maya Angelou. I remember when I was in 9th grade going home after school and watching Oprah and seeing this woman on camera say, "I am a human being. Nothing human is alien to me." I'm like, why is she saying that? And then she said that words are things. It gets in your hair, and then in your clothes, and then inside of you, and before you know it, it affects how you think and what you say and what you do, right? Define American has been in the forefront of challenging the news media's language when it comes to this issue. I don't know if you know this, but being in this country illegally, my illegal presence is actually a civil offense and not a criminal one. So calling someone illegal is actually factually inaccurate. And if you think about it, can you think of any other issue in the American vernacular in which we refer to people as illegal? Is there any other issue? When people are underage driving, we call them underage drivers, not illegal drivers. When someone is driving under the influence, we say drunk driver, not illegal driver. There's no other issue in which we have categorically described a group of people as illegal. And the damage, as we see now, is very, very clear. I'm proud to say that high school journalists and college journalists and journalists, including at the Associated Press, has signed onto our Words Matter campaign. But words matter because facts matter. I hate to be the bearer of news here. As a journalist, it has been incredibly frustrating, the lack of information, the lack of context that many of my colleagues in journalism, particularly in television media, have irresponsibly done when it comes to this issue, right? We have been, unfortunately, the victims of such irresponsible journalism from many people, particularly in television media. You wouldn't even know, right, unless you went to our fact sheet on defineamerican.com, which I know you will. This is a really great tool for uncomfortable conversations. You should give it to a coworker, you should give it to a boss, maybe to your mom or dad or your sister. But this actually has 6 facts, right? Independently sourced facts about immigration in America. I personally gave it to Tucker Carlson a few weeks ago on air. And we have mailed it and delivered it to many journalists across this country. Now, what this fact sheet would tell you that annually, undocumented immigrants like me actually pay billions of dollars in state and local taxes. Did you know that? Did you know that undocumented workers in the past 10 years have contributed $100 billion into the Social Security Fund? Isn't that interesting, though? So while ICE wants to arrest us, a few blocks away, the IRS and Social Security is more than happy to take the money, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I love, I want to pay taxes. I have paid so much taxes, I should be a Republican. But if we're going to do that, can we at least acknowledge people's humanity and the fact that we're contributing to society? Now, as a fact, did you know that the fastest growing undocumented population in America are Asian immigrants, not Latinos or Mexicans? 1 out of 7 Koreans in this country is here illegally, 1 out of 7. The fastest growing within the Asian community is Filipinos, my people. We don't even hear about undocumented Black immigrants or undocumented Caribbeans. They're not at all part of the narrative. Now, I don't want to out Chuck Todd here, but I happen to know Chuck Todd because I used to be a political reporter, and I remember when he was about to interview Donald Trump when he was still a candidate, I emailed Chuck, got him on the phone, and said, "Hey, Chuck, can you at least bring up the fact that undocumented Asian people are actually the fastest growing demographic, and ask Donald Trump how that fits into the wall that he wants to build?" Chuck Todd goes, "Hey, Jose, that's a really interesting fact. Thank you. We'll see what I can do." Of course, nothing. doesn't fit the narrative, right? It's about Mexicans. Did you know that there's 33 million Mexican Americans in this country? 22 million of whom are US-born citizens? I actually think we collectively owe the Mexican people an apology for racializing this issue the way that we have. And one irrefutable fact is that immigrants commit less crime than the native-born population. Study after study after study has shown that. But our government, our own government, and our local governments, including our state governments, have organized themselves around a lie that immigrants commit more crime than native-born US citizens. That lie is the basis of a program within ICE called VOICE, which stands for Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement. Somewhere up there, George Orwell is smiling, saying, "I told you so." That lie is used by officials like Bristol County Sheriff Tom Hudson, who I would really like to meet. Opposing the Safe Communities Act, the sheriff said, quote, "This bill trades the safety and security of our citizens and legal residents for the comfort and concealment of illegal criminal immigrants." What exactly is an illegal criminal? Have we so bastardized and corrupted language that we don't even know what we're talking about? As I say this, by the way, we follow each other on Twitter. The leadership, sir, that you've exhibited on this issue is really commendable. Thank you so much for doing what you do. The reality is we have been so busy calling people names, obsessing over borders and walls, spreading misinformation that we haven't even asked the harder questions. The harder questions like, why do people move? What does US foreign policy and trade agreements have to do with migration patterns? What role does the United States play economically, politically, in this chain of migration? About a year ago, I was in North Carolina doing an event. And after it was getting late at night, and this man seemed annoyed, and he finally said to me, because I said to him that there are about 4.5 million Filipinos in the United States. We're the third largest immigrant group. Mexicans, Chinese, Filipinos. And this man said, well, why are there so many of you here? And it was getting late at night, and I kept thinking, you know, my grandparents always wanted me polite, so I gotta be polite. And so I said to the gentleman, you know, sir, we are here because you were there. That's why we're here. The Spanish-American War? Remember when the Philippines became a protectorate of Puerto Rico? When we were your window to the Orient? Where your armies would go to the Philippines so that they could fight? Did you even know your own history? Now, the reality is, if the Western world, if the United States and Europe can grow its economies and develop its industries through colonization and imperialism, then why can't people move? Why is it that when white people move, it's necessary, it's courageous, it's manifest destiny, it's white man's burden? When people of color move, is it legal? Is it a crime? Now, there are 244 million migrants around the world, including in that figure are refugees. We don't know how many of them are undocumented, according to the United Nations. 244 million. And most of us are migrating to countries that previously colonized or imperialized us. It's the story of the world. And until we ask these harder questions and face maybe uncomfortable facts, we're not going to get anywhere. And while I do believe that countries must define and defend its borders, I think we ought to examine why goods, commodities, and corporations travel more easily than people. I'm fascinated that this iPhone can be manufactured in China, delivered in Cupertino, and up in New York where I bought it. This iPhone can go to more places than my mother can. My mother is sitting on a waiting list in the Philippines and has been doing so for 12 years. There's 4 more years left. I haven't seen her since I was 12, so it's 24 years this August. Because if you're from Guatemala or India or the Philippines, that's how long you wait. Now, mind you, if she were a woman in France and she was lucky enough to score tickets to Hamilton, she could fly to New York, get a ticket, and poof, be one of the many undocumented white immigrants that I meet regularly who whisper in my ear they feel really guilty that they're not a part of the conversation because people never question if they're quote unquote legal. And since we are talking about legality, I think it's incumbent upon us to examine that legality is a construct of power. Lynchings, segregation, violently taking indigenous land, and many more atrocities were legal. Our own history tells us that what is legal doesn't necessarily make it just. Barring women the right to vote was the law of the land. Jim Crow was the law of the land. There was a law called the Chinese Exclusion Act that barred all Chinese laborers, skilled and unskilled, from migrating to the US for 10 years. There were laws barring Germans, Italians, and other Europeans to this country. I really, really wish that Donald Trump knew all of this history. And I can't talk to you about legality and not talk to you about the intersection of legality and citizenship. Did you know that the Naturalization Act of 1790 was the first time we as a country had a set of laws dealing with citizenship? The only people that could be free and citizens were free white people of good moral character. Did you know that it wasn't until 1924 that Native Americans were granted US citizenship? Let me repeat. We did not grant Native Americans citizenship until 1924. My friend Alicia Garza, one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, recently told me that the Black Lives Matter movement is about citizenship. Not citizenship papers, but citizenship as dignity. The reality is my existence was not and is not defined by legality. My existence was made possible, is made possible, by people who didn't need papers or pieces of laws to treat me like a human being. When I travel around the country and I deal with everything that I deal with, it is the kindness and the generosity of these people who I carry with me. People like Mrs. Denny, she was my choir teacher. She was the first adult I ever told that I was here illegally. She wanted the choir to go to Japan for our spring tour. So I pulled her aside and I said, hey, Mrs. Denny, I can't go, I don't have the right passport. And she was like, Jose, we'll get you the right passport. No, Mrs. Denny, I don't have the right passport. And a few minutes later, she gets it. She doesn't say anything to me. The next day, without telling anybody, she tells the whole class, we're gonna go to Hawaii instead. They did not find out. Oh, thanks. My classmates didn't find out that they didn't go to Japan until 2011 when all this became public. Mrs. Denny didn't even tell her husband. This is a man named Peter Pearl who taught me the meaning of the word mensch. So when I was hired at the Washington Post, it was one thing to be an undocumented journalist at the San Francisco Chronicle. It was a whole other thing to be an undocumented journalist at the Washington Post, 3 blocks from the White House. So I kind of started freaking out. I got hired in June. By October, I was getting ready to explode. I figured I had to tell somebody. I felt like I had the word illegal tattooed on my forehead. And Peter was the mentor assigned to me. He loves Starbucks, so I took him to the Starbucks near Lafayette Park. I bought him a mocha, sat him at a park, and I told him everything. I told him the fake social security number, the fake passport, the fake green card, the fake driver's license, everything I told him. I expected him to say, can you go back one more? Thank you. One more. Thanks. I expected Peter to say, hey, we have to tell HR now. You know what he said? He said 2 things. You make so much more sense now. Because I guess I was always walking around like I had the world behind me. And then he said, and this was really a shock, don't tell anybody else. So when I got assigned to be on Hillary Clinton's campaign plane in 2007, had to go through the Secret Service to get on a plane, I would call Peter. When I was assigned to Sarah Palin for a week, I called Peter. When I found out that I was a part of this team that won a Pulitzer for the Post, I called Peter and said, aren't the Pulitzer people gonna know that the social security number is fake? Every time I called Peter, and Peter would always say, Jose, just keep going, you stress too much. What a mensch. I gotta tell you though, I wonder how many Peter Pearls are there all across this country in Needham right now. right? In all industries, making that choice. Making that choice. This woman means a lot to me. Her name is Marcia Davis. She was really my first editor. She set me straight. For whatever reason, when I got hired at the Washington Post, all the black journalists seemed to want to save me. And she was one of my saviors. They just mentored me. And she was the best because she was the hardest on me. She kind of noticed that I was paying too much attention. I always was looking behind my shoulder. I was always trying to figure out what the other journalist was doing. Was I competitive enough? Was I getting the good assignments? And she sat me down one time and said, Jose, you just gotta compete with yourself. The work will always speak for itself, Jose. The work will always speak for itself. She has been a moral compass to me. When I've had to make decisions about, hey, Marcia, this is getting too hard. I think I should just leave. This is getting too hard. My family can't really handle this anymore. I think I should just leave. Marcia was like, did you really write that thesis paper on John Lewis so you could leave? I was an African American Studies major in college, and I wrote my thesis paper on John Lewis. Who, when I met him 3 years ago, John Lewis said to me, Jose, it looks like you got yourself in some good necessary trouble. When I got arrested almost 3 years ago in the Texas border, he was one of the first people to contact me. He said, hey, that was pretty good, it was on TV. These people, Mrs. Denny, Peter Pearl, Marcia Davis, all of my teachers, all of them, Mrs. Mitchell, Mrs. Gursky, Mr. Furman, Pat Hyland, Kathy Dewar, all of them. I didn't need a passport or green card, I just needed them. And more than ever, theirs are the voices that we need to hear. More than ever, as undocumented people, I don't really have the words to describe to you the fear, the absolute fear and panic that is happening in our communities. Part of the reason why I still do what I do is because I want to send a signal that it's okay. But you know what's more important? For them to see all of you here in this community and communities all across this country saying that they're welcome here. What does it mean to be an ally?
Dear undocumented America.
Dear undocumented
Dear
America.
undocumented America. We stand with you.
We are with you.
You have allies.
You have allies.
You have allies.
You have allies. And it's time for those allies to come out.
And it's time for those allies to come out.
I'm an ally to my undocumented cousins.
I'm an ally to my undocumented partner. I'm an ally to my undocumented parents.
To my undocumented parishioner.
To my undocumented students.
I'm an ally to my undocumented neighbor.
To my undocumented coworker.
To my undocumented friend. I am an ally, even though I don't know any undocumented people.
Actually, considering that there are 11.4 million undocumented immigrants,
Even if you don't think you know any, you probably do.
I'm an ally to all immigrants.
I'm an ally to all
I'm an ally to all immigrants. And showing that you're an ally can mean a lot of different things.
It could mean protesting
and organizing.
Or speaking up in uncomfortable conversations.
It means using the correct words.
And listening to what other people have to say.
Whatever happens in the next 4 years,
it's time for us to stand together against ignorance, fear, and hate.
Dear undocumented America.
Dear undocumented America.
We are with you.
We see you.
we stand with you.
Thank you. As the founder of an organization called Define American, I would really like to define the meaning of sanctuary. Apparently it's a noun. The most sacred part of a religious building, and we are in one. It also means a place of refuge, safety, and protection. But I think the real challenge is, how can we together define sanctuary as a verb, as an action? How are we going to show up for our undocumented neighbors, coworkers, classmates, and friends? Our undocumented parishioners and churchgoers? What are you going to do when the undocumented mom of your kid's classmate gets picked up by ICE? What are you going to do when one of the parishioners stops showing up to services because they don't want to leave their house? which is the reality in North Carolina where we were just at. What are you going to do when you're boarding a flight at Logan Airport and you see ICE agents asking people for documentation? I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that the past 6 months has been hard. And you're looking at the most privileged undocumented immigrant in America. I have 7 lawyers, God bless all of them. And I remember after the election, one of them said to me, okay, that's it, Jose, you cannot fly anymore outside of California. Actually, don't get in any more planes, because when I fly, I only have a driver's license from California, which some TSA agents may not honor. One of the lawyers said, California is really big, just drive around. One of the other lawyers said, it may not be a good idea to have a permanent address anymore, just in case a warrant is issued. So you probably should move out of your apartment. When my most radical lawyer suggested that I move to Canada and contact the Prime Minister and apply for asylum, that's when I know things were real. And, I have to be honest with you, I actually thought about Canada for about a week. I went on Craigslist and looked at real estate. Apartments are relatively cheaper in Toronto. I love films, and Toronto is the home to the largest film festival in the world, the Toronto International Film Festival. I figured, hey, Ryan is incredibly equipped. He can run Define American here, and we can Skype while I'm in Canada. I figured, hey, maybe the Prime Minister of Canada may actually allow me to see my mom. Maybe he would let me bring my mom to Canada so we could reunite. So I actually thought about this hard. And then what happened was Nancy Pelosi reached out. Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff emailed me and said, Leader Pelosi would like to invite you to be one of her guests for the State of the Union. To which the lawyer said, you cannot go to the State of the Union? And again, all the lawyers here, we respect you, we love you, we thank you for all you do, but there are some times when we can't just listen to you. So I didn't listen to the lawyers, and if it wasn't for that opportunity from Leader Pelosi, I'm not sure I would have thought stay. But of course, the deciding factor was Marcia Davis. Marcia goes, what do you mean leave? You are home. This is where the fight is, this is where you stay. So, true to form, and making sure that Ryan is fully aware of everything that's happening, I did something that I usually do, which is not only did I decide to show up at the State of the Union, I wrote an article for the Washington Post. And they gave it a clickbait headline. I didn't write that headline. And I want to share this with you. I wrote in the article that I decided to show up that night, because that's what immigrants, undocumented and documented, do. We show up. Despite the obvious risks and palpable fear, we show up to work, to school, to church, to our communities, in big cities and rural towns. We show up and we participate. This joint session of Congress is a quintessential American moment at a critical juncture in our history. I am honored to attend and remind our elected leaders and everyone watching that immigration, at its core, is about families and love. The sacrifices of our families and the love that we feel for a country we consider our home. We show up even though we're unwanted, even when most Americans don't understand why we came here to the first place. We show up even though many Americans, especially white Americans with their own immigrant backgrounds, can't seem to see the common threads between why we show up and why they showed up. At a time when showing up did not require visas and the Border Patrol didn't exist. When our bodies are seen as mere labor, when our presence is broadly criminalized, our very existence is an act of resistance. And I'm proud to say that I showed up here tonight because I refuse to allow a presidency to scare me from my own country. And as we gather here, and time is the most precious thing you could ever give anybody, so thank you for your time. I hope that you ponder two really important questions. How are you showing up for us in ways that you already are doing? And how do you define American? Thank you for having me here. Thank you. Oh, thanks. Oh, thank you. Sit. Thanks. Oh, thank you. Please sit. We have time for questions, but Ryan has something to say.
Let me just say something very briefly. This would be a good moment with the energy in the room to remind you that we are a nonprofit.
Oh.
And we're trying, like Progressive Massachusetts, to build a movement. And one way you can do that is to fill out this form. So I'm just going to hit this form one more time, and there'll be folks in the back. We've got about 25 minutes for questions. This is a movement, and I'll just say, like Dr. King did, you need to keep this movement moving. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep this movement moving. Now, Jose's going to take some questions. Please feel free. Feel free to also share your story. We do know what a question sounds like, though. And I've been told that really to capture everyone's voice and for the recording, it would be best to take questions from the microphone. So thank you. Please join us.
One thing, please, people come up or else you're going to make me nervous. I just have to say, by the way, you got to love America, where an undocumented gay Filipino with a Latino name who majored in African American studies gets to work with the Reverend Ryan Eller, who grew up in Appalachia. That is our team. That is our team. And I'm really proud to say that, I don't know if you know this, but as an undocumented person, you cannot employ me, but I can employ you. So I employ 15 people. And apparently I'm a really good person to work with. So I just wanted to share that. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening. I'm Angela Foster. I'm a nanny and a member leader with Matahari Women Workers Center. We, at Matahari, we organize as women workers, immigrant women, women of color, domestic workers, and we organize to put an end to gender-based violence and exploitation. I, too, have been undocumented for 13 of the 18 years that I've lived here. I'm a Jamaican, and people flee their countries for different reasons: economic gains, persecutions, domestic violence. I came here because of domestic violence. Of course, it followed me. These glasses, these are not fashion statements. These are necessities because of domestic violence. But of course, as I said, it followed me. And because of feared deportation, I was afraid to go to the police. And that is why we're fighting for a secure, safe community in Boston. Because if I wasn't afraid to speak to law enforcement, the abuse would not have continued. So that is why we want Massachusetts to fight for secure community. Leela Watson, an Aboriginal Australian, she said, if you have come to work with me, you're wasting your time. But if your liberation is bound up with mine, let's get to work. So Massachusetts, let's get to work. Let's fight for secure community. Thank you.
Let me just add, by the way, in Los Angeles, where one of the offices of Define American is, the LAPD has reported a 30% decrease in Latinas reporting domestic violence because of precisely this reason, right? So that's why I think it's really important for us to connect the dots between immigrant rights and women's rights, and really make sure that we're acknowledging what's happening. Yes.
Thank you for the good work that you do. It's very important. I'm an educator. I'm also director of the Intercultural Center at Brandeis. And after the election, because I was teaching a course on Latino history in the United States, many students came to me who were undocumented and who outed themselves because they were scared what would happen next. And one of the things that I would like to happen on my campus is to build an ally campaign. But again, the work has fallen on me as a woman of color, as a person who people would assume I would be able to speak for the undocumented because I am Latina. And I have to build the ground up, build the allies in the administration, in the faculty, to then be able to have students speak up because there's many undocumented students on that campus, and I know there are across Massachusetts campus. What can I do? What can we do?
I should have mentioned this, and I'm mentioning it now. Actually, for me, one of the most exciting parts of our work is our college chapters program. We have a Define American college chapter program, and it's become, to us, what the Gay Straight Alliance movement was in high schools, right, 10 years ago, meaning most of the people who are part of the chapters are actually documented U.S. citizens who have undocumented friends. You bring up a really interesting point, by the way, because too often the burden, right, the work ends up on the very people who need help. Right? And so how do we get, for example, a generation of young people, white young people, black young people, Asian young people who have heard about this issue since they were kids? How do we get them involved? So right now we have 19 actual active chapters and 30 chapters all across the country, including one at Harvard. I would love, if you go to our website, you can literally just see college chapter. If you could start one at Brandeis, that would be amazing. I have a question though. The president of the university, what kind of public support has the president given when it comes to this issue?
He has not given public support, though he has told, we have a chief diversity officer, a vice president for diversity and inclusion at Brandeis University, that they would not, that office, the president's office, would not allow ICE on campus. But that has not been made a public statement, despite it being a Jewish university and the purpose of why it was founded. So that has put myself and other people who work with me in a position where we're doing things on our personal email and our personal phone number, because we shouldn't be doing it on our work email and our work phone number.
Ryan, can we connect and we could email the president together?
Oh, you'll like that, right?
Great. Thank you. Yes.
My name is John Boehmer. One of the greatest casualty of the last election for me was truth, and the fact that truth doesn't seem to matter to so much of the country right now. Just in terms of your dialogue with people, pro and anti-immigrant, just could you say a few words about how you deal with people who don't want to deal with a truthful level of communication, because so much of the support for anti-immigrant thought and policy is based on falsehoods. So how do you have a dialogue with someone?
I'm gonna give you a couple of examples. I should have put up this slide, but I kind of went back and forth on it. So after the Facts Matter, campaign that I talked about, one of my friends reached out to me and said, "Jose, you don't bring facts to a culture war?" Let me give you a couple of examples. I remember being in Birmingham, Alabama, right after I outed myself, 2011. Alabama out Arizona. It passed the most draconian anti-immigrant law in the country. So I went there, naturally. And when I go to places like that, I like to go to the Walmarts to see what they sell. Because if there's like a Mexican aisle or an Asian aisle, I feel safer. Right? I just want to know who shops at the Walmart. So going to the Walmart, I remember being in the water soda aisle, and this elderly woman, a white woman, started saying loudly, "Why can't they just speak English?" On the other aisle, in the chips aisle, was a mother and daughter who were speaking in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. When you see, by the way, an Asian person with a Latino name, it means they're Filipino. Just FYI. So I don't speak Spanish, and so I'm like, I didn't know what they were saying either, but this elderly woman, her name was Connie. I introduced myself. You know, hi, I'm Jose. I told her who I was. I told her I'm an immigrant, and she goes, oh, you speak really good English. I'm like, yes, I speak really, I speak English well. I was educated well in public university, Then we got to talking, and usually when the media reports on these tensions, the first thing you hear about is this woman, Connie, complaining about why these Mexicans are speaking Spanish. By the way, they're Ecuadorians, I checked. What they don't tell you is the conversation 20 minutes into it, which is when Connie said to me, what if I can't learn Spanish? And I said to her, well, it's not like they're speaking Spanish everywhere now. You're not going to be required. And she goes, well, I don't learn English. I mean, I don't speak languages all that well. I don't know if I have time to learn to speak Spanish, she says. Isn't it amazing that I'm thinking, I'm afraid, we're afraid, when the fear is actually reciprocal, right? I fly so much that I am like a Delta Diamond member. So I always get upgraded, which is privileged to me. And I'm on Fox News quite a bit. So I was flying from Tampa to LaGuardia, and this man recognized me. And as we were boarding the plane, because I ended up getting upgraded to first class, he grabs my shoulder and he goes, I didn't know illegals could fly first class. Now, mind you, I know karate. And so the moment he touched me, I was like, yo, do not touch me. And then I remember looking back at him, and he was even more broad-shouldered than I am. And he was in a middle seat in coach, and you could tell that he was really uncomfortable. And when you're in the first class thing, they give you free drinks. And I'm like, hey, do I send him my drink back? Like, what do I, Now, mind you, to be honest, I was mad. I was really, and the woman next to me was like, is everything okay? I'm like, no, I'm okay. But when we landed at LaGuardia, what I ended up doing was waiting for him after we deplaned, and introduced myself and said, just so you know, I actually employ people. I'm not taking jobs. Then I got to hear his story. His name is Mark. He's 47 years old, got laid off. He said there was always going to be a person of color who was going to get the job, and not him. And I explained to him that, it doesn't kind of work like that. But what was amazing about that exchange was that if I want to be seen fully, I have to actually take the risk of wanting to see other people fully. The danger, I think, for us right now is using the exact very language and tools that is being used against us to divide us. You can't hate something you don't know, right? So in this work, as much as possible, and again, I think this is my background as a journalist, right? Like where I'm forced to figure out why people think what they think. The best thing for me has been to really listen to people, and that in itself being a radical act.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi. My name is Freddie Kay, and I'm the president of the Women's Suffrage Celebration Coalition of Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
And we are organized to commemorate the upcoming 100th anniversary of women obtaining the vote, which I could tell that took 72 years.
Yes.
A 72-year battle, including jail time and forced feedings and so forth, to actually make it happen, an incredible struggle. I was thrilled to hear your comments and the inclusion of comments about the fact that women didn't have the vote, that's a piece of this. I think it's just amazing how unequal men and women still are today, and the need for this continuing effort. So that in terms of commemorating what happened 100 years ago, but recognizing how far we still have to go. Work like equal pay that is going on in many, many areas, so many topics. So I was thrilled to hear you talk about the issues affecting women, and wondered if you could talk about the integration of these movements, because so often they are segregated and need to be integrated, because women's rights are human rights, to quote someone famous, and affect everyone. And so I think it's fantastic that you've included it in your comments, and I'd like to hear more about how you see those integrating. Thank you.
There's a danger too right now about being distracted by these, phrases like identity politics, or that we're focusing too much on that, when the reality is we have this tremendous opportunity, right, to really figure out what working on the ground together looks like and feels like. One of my friends said to me, this is like post-traumatic growth. Have you ever heard that term, you've heard of post-traumatic syndrome? There's post-traumatic growth. This is a time for post-traumatic growth. And for us, being really intentional on the stories that we tell and the curate, like for example, right now I'm really proud of the work that we're doing with Hollywood writers and screenwriters. So this is right out of the LGBT playbook, right? So back in the Will and Grace era, when you saw more LGBT characters in television, to actually humanize this issue, right? I mean, that led to that movement. Us right now, Define American has a consulting arm that actually talks to writers, producers, and directors who want to integrate immigrant storylines in their shows and movies. We're working with NBC, CBS just reached out to us, Hulu, MTV. For us, one of the emphasis right now, because the women who lead the department are women, one of the emphasis is how do we talk about the intersection of just domestic abuse as an issue, and how language barriers, class barriers, right, really is a concentration that we're seeing in a lot of these immigrant communities. So collecting those stories for us is really, really important, and creating the space so women can lead. Unfortunately, I think too often in the progressive movement, women are still not given an opportunity to lead. Not only in necessarily big organizations, right, but even the strategies, right? So if I had more money, I would really focus, I mean, thankfully we're raising more money, but that's what I would really want to focus on. It's not only collecting those stories, but figuring out how we can get them so people can relate to them, right? I don't want to hear any more about, frankly, I don't want to really hear any more about the division between white feminists and women of color feminists. I think that's a distraction. Right? I think we have an opportunity right now to more specifically figure out, right, what are specific issues that speak to all of us that we can work on together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes. We have 8 more minutes. Yes, sir.
Talk fast. Okay. Well, so your question is how can we show up for you? I wonder if this might be a way, if you tell us. The Safe Communities Act had the hearings yesterday, and MIRA, one of the advocate organizations, is organizing calls to our state legislators in support of it for Monday morning, on Monday. And I'm wondering whether it would help if you would encourage people in the audience to each call.
Can we all turn to, please call? And it's all in there. Actually, where's mine? So please do that, because I've actually heard, I've read some articles that some people, what was that? There's even a script. Feel free, of course, to, be extemporaneous, but you can use the script. I have to tell you, by the way, the fact that law enforcement, for the most part, I was in California yesterday. I was asked to give the commencement at the Daniel Pearl Magnet High School, the most successful journalism high school in Southern California, named after Daniel Pearl, the journalist. And his parents were there, as they are every year. And next to us was the chief of LAPD, right? I'm thankful to live in a state where I know the cops, right? That the head of the LAPD is not gonna ask us for papers and not gonna want to detain us just because we're here illegally. That's the kind of, I'm hoping that's the kind of movement that we can see more across the country. Yeah, please look at the script. Yes.
Hi, presentation is wonderful. And I was at the hearing yesterday. I was also at this forum that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago of this Massachusetts committee to oppose sanctuary, and was inside hearing the speakers. And on the issue of crime, I'm wondering if there's a way of creating a story that, on one hand, you showed us the stats, that the crime level is lower in the immigrant community.
Much lower, yes.
But, at this forum that was held, there was a woman, it's a very poignant story. Her son was killed in a car accident. A truck was driven by an undocumented person, had been arrested on drunk driving in the past. Son was killed, and it's terrible. And she told a story, and in some way there was almost a sympathy of saying, well, these people are undocumented, so, but they have to drive, so, they have to get a license, but it's an illegal license. And, well, they need Social Security, so they get illegal. So it was kind of painting the picture that, these undocumented immigrants, they're really having to lead these illegal lives because they're getting these licenses and Social Security. And of course that language of Sheriff Hodgson, the illegal criminal. But I wondered if there is anybody or you could be turning a story around, like what are the realities that do require, people to follow that path that to me is like, well, that's why we need, pathways to citizenship.
Yes.
But something around that kind of turns it on its head.
By the way, as I'm standing here, I have The Nation of Immigrants, which is this really important book that I wish every elected official and everybody in America would read. John F. Kennedy wrote it. It's probably the best book about a short book on the history of immigration in this country. The foreword was written by Senator Ted Kennedy. And I wonder what Senator Ted Kennedy would make of the moment we're in right now. And the fact that there is no driver's licenses for undocumented residents of Massachusetts. There's only 12 states that allow us to drive, including California. And according to my lawyers, I'm listening to them on this one, I cannot use my California driver's license to drive in states where I should not be driving, right? But to your point, I've been on TV a few times, on Fox News specifically, when they would just, without warning, have me debate an angel mom. So a mother who had lost a kid or a son or a daughter because of an undocumented immigrant, which really sucks. Actually, it happened when I was at the Republican National Convention. Megyn Kelly just said, hey, here's this woman, she lost her son, and there she is next to me. And all I could do was turn my chair to her and say, ma'am, I am so sorry for your loss, but we are not to blame. The reality is, here's the secret. Undocumented people are just like everybody else. We're no less smarter or dumber. We're no less heroic, right? We're just like everybody else. And that gets lost in so much of this, which is why I think the language of marrying criminality with illegality, right, has been so cemented in the psyche. For me, though, what you just brought up, which is you just opened up a can of worms, which we're going to get into right now. I am now convinced that the immigration system is not broken. Because if it's broken, it seems like some sort of an accident. I broke my ankle, right? This seems deliberate. We put a sign outside of the US-Mexico border saying, keep out, 10 yards in, what do we say? Help wanted. We pay $100 billion into Social Security. According to the Social Security Administration, a primary source, undocumented workers have kept Social Security solvent, right? Now, the public does not know this. What they do know is that when a crime happens, you turn and you blame. That's why I think I have to tell you, sitting here tonight, listening to everybody here, I feel like there's this sense of community that is building up. And the power of what that community can do to pass something like the SAFE Act, the Safe Communities Act, right? What we can do as a community, so we say to people, you can't just point your finger there. This is in all of us. I think that's the power of the moment now. Thank you. Jim, how many more questions can I take? One more?
We'll take because they've been patient, our two questioners.
Two questions, and
then we have a few closing announcements, so
great.
Please be
yes,
patient.
Please.
Of course, if you need to leave, you're welcome to leave, but who would want to? This is too interesting. So, our two questioners.
Hi.
Hi. I simply wanted to say maraming salamat.
Uy, there's a Filipino in the audience. Kamusta ka na?
Okay na. So my name is Christina Miranda, and I look Asian, so I feel that, bro. I really do. I'm in that.
Miranda,
place,
so, see? I told you.
That's right, yeah. So I simply just wanted to say thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. my parents are members of the deaf community. And they moved to the States for a better education. So I would like to echo the lovely woman who first spoke and said that people leave their countries for a reason. And so in the Philippines, then and now, the education is quite terrible.
Yep.
Specifically for deaf people, deaf and hard of hearing people. So my parents' mothers actually were strong advocates for deaf education, and that's how my parents met. So my father moved to the States when he was 17 on a student visa and was able to obtain a citizenship. My mother was moved to the States when she was 14, and she was only able to obtain a green card. She had a green card for so long that I remember, for the first 10 years of my life, interpreting for her from English into American Sign Language what these laws meant that even I did not understand. And I had to look up in dictionaries and ask people and say, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? And so it wasn't until I was 12 that I was actually interpreting my mother's citizenship test. So I am privileged. I am privileged because I was born in the States. I am privileged because both of my parents are thankfully American citizens. But my mother struggled so hard here for 20 years. She couldn't handle it anymore. She moved back home to the Philippines. And she's actually doing better over there. Even though the access and the awareness of deaf education and access to employment and all of the things are still 20 years behind, she's happier there. And I simply wanted to just say thank you. Thank you for doing this fight. Thank you for acknowledging our people. Thank you for being so brave and for sharing your story and for allowing myself and for others to be able to share their story as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. What's up?
How's it going? My name is Will. I really enjoyed the presentation. I'm from Needham. My question is, you've detailed a couple of like Walmart, airline kind of incidents.
Yes.
I see videos like that. I'm not sure if you saw the specific one from Walmart in Kentucky recently. But even more than that, when you see, for instance, like those two Indian men in Kentucky, or in the Applebee's that were shot in Canada, and you see that maniac in Portland cut apart two people who try to step in and help two immigrants, two people from, that were doing Muslim culture and expressing that. How do you have our elected officials, people, anyone combat that incredible violence that is rearing its head?
Well, I just have to say, the culture that we have right now, right? I mean, of course, it's not as if these things hadn't happened before. The difference now is this, right? But I think more important than the politicians, because look, the politicians can only do so much, and God bless them for doing the right thing to do. I think this is also up on us, right? And I'm amazed that whenever these things happen, how many strangers decide to not be a stranger, to say something, to record, to report, to actually bear witness. This is why I think the work of James Baldwin is more prophetic than ever, right? The novelist and the writer James Baldwin, telling all of us to bear witnesses in each other's lives and that our history is each other, right? And so I think I try really hard to make sure that we don't focus so much on all the negative stuff because they just get heightened. And I try to find those moments where I feel like a sense of community is being built at a time like this. That's the first thing. The last thing I want to say before Jim talks, and that woman that just talked about her parents, I started seeing a therapist, which is kind of dangerous, because I don't really know how to talk about my mom. As you can tell, I just hope that she knows that putting me in that plane 24 years ago was worth it. I hope that everything I'm doing and that I have done has tried to honor whatever that sacrifice was. And to all the young people, because the emails that we get from undocumented young people, right, who are so afraid and don't know what to do. This quote from Baldwin that Your crown has been bought and paid for. Your ancestors, they already gave it up for you. It's done. Now you can love yourself. And being we are in Massachusetts, being we are here, honoring all those ancestors that did what they did so that we can be. Thank you again for having us here.
Thank you.
We did show Jose's film, his first film, I should say, documented last Sunday after church about his relationship with his mother, the story of his mother, I should say. And there was not a dry eye in the house after we showed it. I urge you to watch it. Documented is what it's called. John.
Okay, just very briefly, after an event like this, I guess I just have to pause and thank Jose Antonio Vargas one more time. That was an amazing event.
Yeah.
After something like this, one of the questions one often asks themselves is, what can I do? Well, the Safe Communities Act is an active piece of legislation that needs your support and advocacy now. And if you don't have this piece of paper on the Safe Communities Act in your package, you can get it on Progressive Mass's website, but you can also find it in a couple of points distributed out the back. It has a phone number to call. It has the message to your state rep and senator. This is the kind of advocacy that Progressive Mass does all the time for this legislative session, 17 pieces of legislation that we care about, and it's there to support you and help you through that effort. Similarly, I just want to mention again what Ryan had said. This card is designed to fill out both sections. We'll cut it down the middle and split it up. But you fill out both sections, and that'll help you to support Define American as well as Progressive Mass. And if your mother ever told you, make sure your handwriting is extremely important. And if you are hasty with your handwriting, you can end up creating a problem for a lot of people. I wrote a very messy 41 that apparently looked like a 49. So you need to correct that and make it a 41 for our address. But I just want to thank everybody on behalf of Progressive Needham in Massachusetts. Wonderful to see you all here.
Great. DARYN, let's stand, and she's going to sing us out.
Yes, I am. And so as you consider with your generous hearts what you're willing to give, and as we go forth from this place, I invite you to stand one more time. I have some good verses